Hello everyone, welcome to my talk, and I'll tell you today about my 30-day TestSphere challenge. How was it? My name is Uladzislau Ramanenka. I work at Badu in London office, and I test iOS client features and work in iOS team. Briefly about our development and testing process, and briefly about Badu just to be on the same page. We are a dating application, and we have 400 million users worldwide who use our products. So, speaking about our development and testing process, if there is any feature, task, bug, they are done in separate branches. They are tested in branches if required, and then on a daily basis, we create integration branch from dev. There is another round of testing in integration if required, and on a weekly basis, we create a release branch and another round of testing of release. Generally, release testing is a regression testing of the most important parts of the application with the emphasis on the recently changed parts. So we have release testing each week. Now let's move on to the TestSphere cards. How many of you have heard about them? Okay, not so many. Have you tried them? Great. So TestSphere cards are, so actually it's a deck of cards. It looks like that. They're designed to get you thinking about testing, get you into discussions about testing. There are 100 cards. They're divided into 5 categories. Heuristics, or ways how you can test something or how you can tackle a problem. Techniques, feelings that are triggered by your testing activities. Quality aspects of your application, for example, or software under test. And patterns that you can follow in your testing or that can guide your work. Each card contains a testing concept, a slogan, and 3 examples that put the testing concept into different ways. So, as I was telling you, we have release testing each week. And my idea with TestSphere cards was to try to diversify the routine checks. And if we are testing release each week, it sounds like a routine check, right? So there are plenty of options, plenty of ideas how you can use TestSphere cards, and actually in a couple of hours in a Barcamp area we'll try to do a risk storming with TestSphere cards. But my idea was to try it in our testing activities. So I tried to apply the cards in my testing and especially in release testing. So the main parts of the applications that we generally test is registration, because you cannot have an application without registration. Encounters. Encounters are is a feature that actually everybody knows dating applications for. It's just swiping right or left if you like a person or don't like him. Push notifications, landings, and so on and so forth. So each week we have a spreadsheet with lots of points that we need to check. Each person takes one category, tests it, and then says if everything is fine or not, and then goes to another point. And inevitably, in a week or maybe in a month, you test the same thing. So, for example, if you're testing registration today, probably in 2 weeks you will be testing registration again. And it can be a problem here because actually you maybe will follow the same patterns. You will be doing the same, and you may have, like, you know about pesticide paradox. For example, you can just bugs can escape because you are doing pretty the same flows. You are following pretty the same steps. So of course, we try to vary our checks. We try to switch people between tasks, but inevitably, you will be testing the same thing again. So how exactly I was doing my challenge? So here are all the cards. So first of all, I removed feelings and quality aspects. So these are the cards that are left. And then, before each testing activity, and in that case, before release testing activity, I picked up a random card. I looked through the card and then left it in a field of view. And I tried to follow the principles on that card in my testing activity. So finally, I ended up with 30 cards that I used. And after each testing activity, testing task, I tried to see if the card was useful for me or not. And I tried to put them into 3 categories. Was it a positive experience, a neutral experience, or a negative experience? So today, I'll present you 10 cards out of 30. And they actually fall into different categories: positive, negative, and neutral. And also, I wanted to show my challenge as a journey because I thought that cards are actually intertwined between each other. They are not separate. And I also thought about some source of inspiration for me. And I came with the London Tube or London Underground map, and I'll show my challenge, my journey in style of London Tube. So let's start with a positive category, positive cards that helped me. And the first stop is testing of registration and sign in, and the card is galamping. Galamping technique means that as a testers, we often design our test cases or checks in the shortest possible way. We go from point A to point B. However, users do not use our applications in that way. Often, they add some redundant steps. And so we need to see if our application is ready for it. So if we are talking about registration, let's see the shortest possible way. You just go from the first screen till the last screen. And then here you are in the application, you can use it. Okay, I decided to try to vary my checks. For example, I'm on the first screen, I'm entering my name on registration. I'm going further to the date of birth, and then I decide to go back and to change my name, and then proceed with the registration. So will my details be saved correctly? Will application behave correctly in that way? Or, let's say I'm entering my name, I'm leaving the phone aside, I just forget about registration for a while, I receive a push notification that probably I want to finish my registration. I go back to the application and I'm trying to finish the registration process again. And I want to see if application does it well, if we can still continue using the application. So let's try to use that technique now with that screen. So it's the date of birth screen, so you enter date of birth. Let's try to think about any checks that you can do on that screen using that technique. Anybody? I think we can have it without microphone. It will be really fast, I hope. Anybody? Yeah, we can go back to home screen. I'll just repeat. It's fine. Yeah, we can push continue without adding anything, right? 30th of February, great. Switch off internet, perfect.
Year that is not valid, maybe this year.
Invalid year, right. So, my point here is that also we have another subtle button on that screen. Actually, it's covered by the keyboard. Yeah, so that's all correct. But also, there are some funny things. So actually, it's there on purpose. It's not an error. It's not a bug. But you also need to consider these buttons, even if you don't know that it's there, but actually it is. So that's another flow. So you can start the registration via Facebook instead. You can go back and use Facebook and so on. So, and now some examples of the issues that we had. Here, that's an issue that happened. If you see there is a name entering screen, but the validation is for the date of birth. And apparently you cannot proceed further because it's not possible to make a name of a date of birth and vice versa. So that's a real bug that happened when we go first and back inside the registration process in our application. So this card was really useful for me. Next stop is Dunning-Kruger effect and testing of live streaming. Dunning-Kruger effect means that if you're unable to assess your own skills, you may think that they are really great, but in fact, they are not so great. And live streaming is a service that Badu launched in summer, and actually it just allows you to stream, you're a streamer, or to view the streams, live streams inside the application, so you're a viewer. And by the time when I was testing it in the release, there were plenty of features, plenty of tasks. I worked on them a lot, and I was sure that I know everything about live streaming. I don't need to consult any documentation. I remember everything. I just can test against my memory. But of course, I may have remembered something incorrectly. And that's really, really dangerous way of doing things. I know that it might sound like not really professional, but to be honest, that's what I thought back then. And I'm happy that the card reminded me about that pitfall, and it reminded me that actually I should not do like that. I might really not know some of the features, or I may have some outdated information about them. So this card was really useful for me as well. The next one is testing of live streaming. Again, as I was telling you, we often test the same features in different releases, but this time I have explainability heuristic card. Explainability means that if product is hard to explain to the user, maybe they won't use it. Maybe they will fail to do what you want them to do. And with that heuristic, I was testing a new feature that was actually dedicated to engage users more in live streaming. It was a bunch of tooltips that showed different functions, different features that we have in live streaming for the users, and they explained what they can do with the buttons, with the elements, and so on. So you see they are quite different, so they just point to different parts of the screen and explain what users can do. And with explainability heuristic, I decided, okay, let me act as a user. I see that tooltip. Can I follow the text that is on the tooltip exactly like it's written without knowing what is actually happening? Or maybe there is a tooltip for a functionality that is actually missing. Or maybe there is a translation that does not fit into the bubble for the tooltip. Maybe in other languages, words are just longer or buttons are bigger. What actually happens if I try to close a tooltip? I know as a tester that they are automatically dismissed and they disappear in 3 or 4 seconds. But if I try to close it, what will happen? If I try to follow the button, what will happen again? So for the real users, that may be the case. And actually, we had an issue with that as well. So in recorded streams, in the streams that we recorded and then saved into user profiles, we did not have tooltips at all. So for everything else was in place except for the tooltips. So for the real users, that may be an issue. And that's why that card is also in a positive category. The next one is the testing of push notifications with the interruption pattern. Interruption pattern means that we need to see if our application can handle exceptional flows or if it can restore after some sleep or some long delay. And with push notifications, what I actually here just a push notification, I thought, okay, let me try to interrupt opening of the application via push notification. I might think about old push notifications. Maybe they lead to some expired screens or expired states. Or maybe if I'm trying to open application and I receive an incoming call or incoming message, what will happen? Will I still get inside the application? Will I still be at the correct screen with the correct information? Or if I'm trying to open application, but before I was at some modal screen, let's say I was making some payment, will the payment screen be closed? Or should we let the user finish his payment or her payment and then open the required screen? Or just trying to open application, close, and so on and so forth, just multiple times and see if it works correctly. So basically, the issues still appear in that scenarios. Here is an example of the issue. You see that the layout of the screen on the left is incorrect. Actually, the correct layout is on the right. We have some missing elements, and that's what may happen if our application is not opened correctly via push notifications. Another example is here. There is a notification that somebody is interested in me, so some Kate, and I'm happy to chat with her. But I'm transferred to my own profile, and probably I will never find Kate again, so I may be really frustrated. That's why I thought that pattern was really helpful, and it's again in the positive category. That card helped me. The next one is testing of registration and sign-in, but now with user desires heuristic. User desires mean we need to consider what users want. What do they want from our application or in our application? And this testing was just on the eve of iOS 12 release. And can you think about any iOS 12 related feature that can be related to registration and sign-in? Great. There are at least a couple of them. And so for that activity, I decided, okay, I'll pick a beta version of the iOS 12, and I try to see how our application works on it. And one of the features that is really cool, I like it, it's SMS one-off passcodes. So basically, if you need some PIN that you receive via SMS, for example, in our case, it's for registration, for confirmation of your phone, you don't need to go to messages. It just appears above the keyboard, and you can just tap it, and it will be automatically filled into the fields. So it's really useful. It's really fast. So that's a cool feature. And definitely, because in our registration process, we have phone option, so users will definitely see it. But there is another feature that is called automatically strong passwords. iOS allows you, suggests you to not to use some easy passwords, easy to break passwords, but instead it suggests you some really strong passwords. And it makes sense to do it on registration. but not on login. Here is a login screen where there is no sense to suggest you a password because you should already have one. So if there is this password suggestion here, it's really confusing for the user. So actually that was an issue that we had that was fixed shortly after iOS 12 release. So this card was great and useful for me again as well. Now let's move to automated testing with familiarity heuristic. First of all, about heuristic. So familiarity means that if there is something that we know from our past experience, so probably we may think about the problems that we expect or about the problems that we may have in the future. And so if we're talking about our automation test coverage, I'm talking about functional tests and functional end-to-end tests. So we use Calabash, we use Ruby, WebDriver agent, and iOS device server. And we also have a lot of tests. So we have 1,400 tests on simulators, 90 on real devices, 90 for live streaming, and 170 of payment-related tests. So this check in the release means that somebody is responsible for reviewing all tests that we run against release, and somebody is responsible for reporting any issues, crashes, or some other weird behaviors that we have, and finally saying if we are ready to go with the release or we need to delay release and fix the issues. So there is a dedicated person for it, and that time it was me who was actually checking the tests. So that's the sample test results report in TeamCity, and as you may see, there are a couple of tests that failed. And using familiarity heuristic, it may be easier for you, and it was really easier for me, to see what can actually be the reason of the issue, because they may be different issues, but based on the experience, it looks like there are 4 main categories for us. So it may be a functional bug. And in that case, it's actually obvious you just need to talk to the developer, and you need to try to fix that issue. It can be an issue on server side, on billing side, or on our iOS side. Next, it can be flaky implementation. And this category is actually the most annoying one, because not only it makes our runs longer, it also makes them less reliable. So everybody knows that if there is a flaky test, then probably they may be not an issue, so you just need to spend additional time and see if it's a test issue or a really bug in the implementation, in the feature. Infrastructure issue like power outage, for example, we run tests at night, maybe there is no Wi-Fi in the office, or there is really some issues with electricity, so generally lots of tests failed at once. Or some unsupported change. We may be not aware of some changes in other teams, on other sites, for example on server side, and we may not have our tests adjusted in time. So that can be another issue. So why this card is in the positive category? Because actually familiarity heuristic describes the whole approach that we have for monitoring of the tests and for maintaining of the tests. So it really helps us to work with automated testing and with automated testing check in the release checklist. Next, let's move on to the neutral category. And here, the first stop is actually, coincidentally, is automation pattern with push notifications. And automation pattern means that maybe there is some work that we can give to robots, probably robots or automated software or some software can do the job better than than people. And speaking about push notifications again, despite of the fact that there is a person who is responsible for the whole test suite monitoring in the release, if you are picking some of the checks, for example, push notifications, first of all, you need to look at the test results. If there are some muted tests, for example, then you need to pay more attention to that to that features in your testing. Or if there are some failed scenarios, probably you can rerun them, or you can check them manually. Plus, if there are some popular push notifications according to the statistics that are not covered with tests, probably you need to create to-do files and to do for future implementation of the tests. Because we want to have as much tests as we can that are actually that make any sense. So that's why popular pushes should definitely be covered, not some random ones. So why the card is in the neutral category? The reason is that actually such approach is implied. So we already follow it, and it did not give me anything, any additional knowledge or any additional insights. We already follow that approach that we need to check test results first and care about automation first, and only then proceed with manual testing. So at that time, we already followed the pattern. Card is in neutral category. But now, my question is, I've already covered a few cases when we tested push notifications. And my question is, have you noticed what was in common between all three occasions? So here are the screenshots that I used to illustrate you the cases with test of push notifications. So what's in common between all three cases? We have time, probably we can wait. Ian, anybody? So we are getting some information from
a user?
Yeah, but the users are different, so other suggestions. A great chance to win a voucher for a t-shirt. Time? Time is different.
Icon and name.
But it's the same application, so of course time application is the same, of course, yeah. Sorry.
Only in the middle we can see swipe to open, and I think from technical side it means something different.
No, but I'm asking just about the common thing. There's something that is in common between all three screenshots. Yeah, there are lots of different things, yeah, really. Okay, they all ask you, yeah, but I mean, they all ask you to come back to Badu because it's about Badu. Okay, probably it was not the best joke. I'll cut it from my presentation from the final slides. Yeah, actually the background is actually the same because it's the same phone, same background. And my point was that I'm a fan of Queen's Park Rangers team. Anybody else in the room? Another chance to win the t-shirt. I'm trying to engage everybody, but okay, let's move on to. But if you can tell it later, we'll think what we can do. Yeah, so the next stop is log digging pattern and testing of encounters. So encounters, again, is just swiping left, right if you like person or dislike person. And log digging pattern means that we need to have a look at the logs, inside the logs, and the logs may contain some useful information. And we rely on logs a lot. So first of all, we report the crashes. We use Hockey App for crash reporting and for observing the crashes. And it's really useful to have a look there because sometimes crashes appear in the background, and as a user may not notice them at all. So you as a tester may not notice them at all because they're happening in the background. Also, we have some additional logs, debug logs in console, so we can add some additional information and try to test the application and see what's happening. They're added only in test environments, so they're not affecting the production and real users at all. Actually, I have that console opened on my screen at all times when I test because sometimes there are some weird stuff in the logs. For example, that's an example of the issue. That's an interface of client-server logs, and as you see, each request to the server is duplicated. It creates additional stress for the server, and actually it makes no sense at all. So it's definitely a bad issue. Why the card is in the neutral category? Again, because we already follow the pattern. We already rely on logs a lot. And I was not able to see what can I do more with that card, and I just proceeded with our normal flow as usual. So that's why I put the card into the neutral category. And now let's talk about the negative category. So the first stop here is testing of chat and trying to use superficial pattern. Superficial means that if we don't care about functionality, we may at least have a look at how it looks like. So actually release testing seems to be a good occasion because for release testing we have roughly 1 day, maybe sometimes even less. So we cannot test all functionality of the chats that we have. That's why I decided, okay, I'll try to follow the card. And I'll try to focus on the UI aspect, and I'll try to focus on colors. So that's how our chat looks like. You see that we have different elements, messages, stickers, photos, requests. So probably colors may be an issue. Probably I can try to somehow break the colors. So that's another example of the elements we have. And I decided, okay, let me have a look at the general layout or borders, or buttons. Let me try to break them. Let me try to do something with the application and see if our colors are still consistent, if they're still correct. If, for example, we still have the errors in red, and if we still have all hints shown on the screen, but not like white text on white background. The problem here is that, in general, we have the whole system. We have two systems that actually allow us to eliminate such issues and eliminate the risk of such issues appearing. The first one is called Live Shots. Actually, it's a script that goes through all screens, takes the screenshots, and then in a web interface you can compare the screenshots of different versions, of different languages, of different screen sizes. So it's much easier to do it like that, but not to go manually through all screens of the chat. Secondly, we have the whole design system that is actually done specifically in order to make UI development easier, and that actually helps designers and developers make UI more consistent and helps to eliminate possible issues. So I'm not telling you that we don't have issues with UI in chat, but we still have, for example, such weird issues with buttons. Actually, functionally it works, and actually our functional suite passed because it was able to tap on the button, but of course button is misplaced. So it's quite funny that the button is in the top left corner, but anyway. My point is that we still have functional issues, and probably in the release testing, it's better to try to focus on functional issues first. So here you see that photo is not able, we cannot upload a photo, we cannot send a photo, and probably that's a bit more important for the user if they cannot send anything, and probably if you're testing chats in release, if you don't have any science or any knowledge why you may have broken UI, for example, you don't have any recent tasks about chat UI, then probably you need to focus first on the functionality. And for example, here, it's definitely not a good bug. It's just a bad one. So that's why I put the card in the negative category. I think that it led me away a bit. So I should have focused on functionality testing more. And finally, our stop is too many heuristic and testing of photos and videos. Too many heuristic means that everything has some theoretical limit, and we need to see if we can go beyond that limit, and if we can, what our application actually will do if we go beyond that limit. So talking about photos and videos inside the application, there are lots of options how they can be tested, what users can do with them. They can add profile photos, they can add profile video, lots of profile photos, add them at registration, after registration. So I decided, okay, let me try to break the application. For example, first I don't have any photos at all, then I have a lot of them at the same time, if our application handles that correctly. Or I'm trying to upload lots of photos from gallery, from camera, and I'm trying to mix and match them and see if application again works correctly. Or some large photo, long video, or bad internet and large video, and so if we still can use application, if it's not blocked, if it's still uploaded, and so on. Why the card is in the negative category? Because I admit that it's a lot of fun doing it, like trying to record long videos, for example, 1 hour long, or trying to upload very large photos. But again, probably release testing is not the best time for it. So if there are any signs, or if there are some recent changes in photo or video functionality, then probably you can focus on it. But otherwise, it's better to check the main flows. It's better to check the cases that real users will face more often than trying to upload a 1 hour video. That's why I thought that check was really excessive, and it was not the best time for it. If I need to check it, probably I need to have a separate task or separate bug and do it there. So that's the whole journey map. All 30 stops, we covered only 10 of them, not covered for different reasons. One of them is that we don't have enough time. Second, it will be really hard for me to explain without giving some background information, and then that talk will last forever, really. So, as a conclusion, I tried a brand new approach to generating test ideas with that challenge. I gained some useful insights. I learned not to follow instructions blindly, but to think about what I'm doing. And actually, I ended the experiment inspired for the future. I think that everybody should try to find new ways for test ideas generation, and everybody should try to vary their checks, but not to follow the same scripts again and again. So I will definitely continue trying to find other ways of inspiration in testing, and I encourage you to do the same. Thank you, and I'm more than happy to answer your questions.
Hi, my name is Natalie, and my question is next. So imagine the situation that you use the same card maybe for 2 times in different situation. Are you sure that when you're going to use it on the second time, you wouldn't think like the same on the first time, you know? Because you take one card, you know that it is useful, and you think how to use it, and you was going like on the straight. And when you have another test activity and also pick up this card, are you sure that you, not exactly you, but can we be sure that we wouldn't think it the same way, and at this situation we can not to see all the problems, you know, like about the pesticide also?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. So first of all, no, I'm not sure. I cannot be sure in it, but there are a couple of points here. The first one, as I told in the very beginning, each card has 3 examples, and actually they really put the slogan and the concept into different light. And if you have a chance to have a look at the cards, you can really see that they're really different. And of course, you just need to remember your point that yeah, we can fall into pesticide paradox with the cards as well. In my challenge, I use different cards. Probably, if I try to do that again with the same cards, yes, I may have that issue. But another point here is that, again, the point from conclusion, you need to think about what you're doing. If you follow the instructions, yes, you may have that issue. Yeah, you're completely right. But I'm not sure that anybody have an answer for how to solve that issue with like silver bullet or something like that. So, unfortunately, yeah.
Hello. Thank you for your speech. It was very motivating. In the very beginning, you said that you removed 2 categories of cards. Mm-hmm. Could you please explain why, and are you planning to use them later?
Yeah, so there were 2 reasons why I removed them. First of all, I was not able to see how can I use them. So my idea was to try the challenge, because I didn't know what will be at the end. So I was not able to think how can I use feelings. Really, I still don't know how to use feelings in that deck. So if anybody knows, you can tell me. I don't know anybody who knows how to use feelings, but there are 20 cards. Secondly, they are really used in other ways, for example, for retrospective or for risk analysis. In my challenge, I decided to try the exact techniques or patterns. I know how to use them, and I know how to apply them in my testing activities. Probably, if I decide to do it in the future, definitely for other activities, maybe I will come back to them, but I'm not really sure how to do it. So I definitely know I can tell you how to use it in risk storming, but not in that challenge.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for that talk. So my question is, wouldn't it be better for you to just look through the cards instead of pulling them at random, look at all of them and decide which would fit the feature better, the test or the feature better?
Yeah, actually I thought about it at the very beginning, but then I thought, okay, we can again be at the same place where we have pesticide paradox. If I'm sure that, for example, for registration I need that card, probably I am biased. So probably I am just not, I'm not aware of some aspects, and that card, if I pick them randomly, I am forced to think how can I apply the card. So that was main idea, just to think out of box and not to be in the comfortable situation when I know everything. So that's why I picked cards randomly. That's why I had some of them that did not help me. Among those that I did not cover, there were lots of that I wasn't able to apply as well. So that was the main idea. But yes, your approach also works. If only you can, if you want to try, you can definitely do like that as well. Yeah.
Thanks for your speech. Did your management know what are you doing?
Yeah, they also know about the talk that I'm doing here, yeah.
So they allowed this only because you're going to
No,
Speak louder.
but actually it did not lead to any time increasing of the time, because so the only time I spent was only to read the card, try to apply it, and generally it was not, because we are limited in time anyway, so I was not able to spend too much time, like as much as I want. So they knew about it. We also tried it for different activities, so it was fine. In our case, in our circumstances, it was fine. If I knew that the task, for example, is too urgent, or probably there are some other things that I need to consider, then I just didn't try my challenge, so it was not that risky. So I tried them on the tasks that are routine. If they are routine, they are not really urgent, generally, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, thank you. And if anybody is interested in risk storming session, it will be at 4:15 at the Barcamp session. Thank you.